independent in thought and punk rock in life. It's the Chad Benson Show.
Hey, how you doing? My name's Greg Knapp. I'm filling in for Chad. He's on a little mini vacation. You can jump in on the Chad Benson Show at 844-DIG-CHAD, 844-DIG-CHAD. Nothing really happening today. I don't know what we'll talk about. Okay, there's a couple things going on, and a couple things going on about President Trump, at least by the way it's being presented in the press. Now, it's very interesting because some of this touches on the president, but most of it doesn't, and yet the way it's being presented by many is that, oh man, this is almost, it's happening now. Get ready. President Trump's about to fall. It's going to be impeachment, and many have to go to impeachment. We might actually just arrest the guy. We might just put him in the stocks. Here it is from the AP. The headline, the latest. Democrat. White House looks like criminal enterprise. Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut says the White House looks increasingly like a criminal enterprise after the convictions of President Donald Trump's former campaign chairman Paul Manafort and personal lawyer Michael Cohen. Well, okay, but the situation with Paul Manafort had absolutely nothing to do with any kind of Russian collusion, and the stuff that's happening with Michael Cohen has absolutely nothing to do with Russian collusion. So, well, but they were around the president, and the Michael Cohen thing has to do with paying off Stormy Daniels. Is she Russian? Well, that doesn't matter. I'm just saying it's all supposed to be about the Mueller investigation. It's all supposed to be about Russian collusion, and it's not. Now, is it a good thing that Paul Manafort has been found guilty for the president? No. But you realize that what he's been found guilty for is stuff that he did long before he was involved with President Trump. Absolutely nothing to do with anything he did during the campaign. You realize that, right? I know it's hard to realize it because of the way that the media presents it. Case in point, here's the NBC News item. Manafort convicted on 8 counts, mistrial declared on 10 other charges. The trial was the first public test of special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation in possible Russian meddling and obstruction of justice by Trump. Really? This trial was the first public test? No, it wasn't. There's nothing in the Manafort trial about Russian meddling and obstruction of justice by Trump. There's absolutely nothing in that case about it. Zero to do with President Trump and Russian collusion. But that's the headline from NBC News. The trial was the first public test of special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. Really? No, it wasn't. And while the special counsel was vindicated, the victory wasn't total. I know that you want it to be about the Russian investigation, NBC News, but that's not what it was about. No. And this is why you're supposed to have a crime given to a special prosecutor. Look, here's the crime that we want you to investigate, special prosecutor. And here's the scope of your investigation. But that wasn't done. It was given a blank check and a blank, really, page to write whatever he wanted to on it. And imagine that you are now the target of a federal investigation that has no limits on it, no time frame, no amount of money, no alleged crime even. Crime, like written down legal crime. And they're going to be able to go through your entire life to try and find something you've done wrong. And they have all the time they want, all the lawyers they want, all the money they want. Are they going to find something? For most of us, the answer is going to be yes. Not me. I've never done anything wrong. Well, you probably don't even know some of the laws you've broken. Now, I'm not trying to excuse Paul Manafort. I really don't care if Paul Manafort, goes to prison or not in terms of I don't have any personal interest in it. If he did what they say he did in violating the tax law and fraud, and fine, absolutely. But the idea that somehow this means that President Trump and his campaign colluded with Russia, there was nothing about that in the entire case. The jury deliberated for 4 days. Manafort faces another trial as well next month in Washington. He came to the Trump campaign. This is from NBC News still. He came to the Trump campaign with deep ties to Russian figures. He was the only non-Trump family member from the campaign team to participate in that June 2016 Trump Tower meeting with a Russian lawyer, which was set up on the promise of incriminating information about Trump's opponent. Yeah, there was a lawyer who was Russian who said, we have information on Hillary Clinton violating federal election law. So they took the meeting. There's absolutely nothing illegal about that. And like I said, you might want to compare it. If you want to compare, apples to apples here, how about, just taking the meeting is what Donald Trump Jr. did, compared to Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee actually paying for a foreigner, a British man, to pay Russian operatives to dig up dirt on the opposing presidential candidate. So for Trump's son to take a meeting with somebody is worse than what the Democrats and Hillary Rodham Clinton did? That somehow what Donald Trump Jr. did was evil, including with the Russians, but what Hillary Clinton and the DNC did wasn't? See, this is where it just gets totally nutso. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever if you're actually keeping score and paying attention. So we go back to the NBC report. He also played a role, Manafort, in an effort to soften a plank in the Republican Party platform calling for lethal aid to Ukrainians fighting the Russian invasion of their country. And did that happen? Did they soften that in the Republican platform? No, they didn't. In fact, they did the opposite. They strengthened it. They didn't put that in the NBC report. Isn't that interesting? The charges at issue in the Manafort trial weren't directly related to Russian interference in the 2016 campaign. The NBC News finally told you that. It's 7 paragraphs deep into the story, but they finally told you that these charges weren't directly related to Russian interference. No, actually, what would have been better was to say they weren't involved at all. They weren't related at all, not directly, not indirectly. But instead they go on. But it painted a startling picture of a senior campaign figure who appears to have had the motive, means, and opportunity to help the Russians. So did a lot of people in the Hillary Clinton campaign. Does that mean they colluded too? It's not about. There's absolutely no charge against Manafort that has anything to do with that. Wow. I mean, it's just amazing. Look, like I said, I want to know if the Trump campaign colluded with Russia to try to win this election. I would like to know if they helped Russia hack into the DNC emails and then leak them to the media, which was, remember, what this thing was supposed to all be about, which has nothing to do with what the Manafort trial was about and has nothing to do with what Cohen pleaded guilty to today. So I would love to really know that. But have you noticed that isn't being brought up anymore? Isn't that weird? I mean, that's what the whole thing was about, and now all of a sudden it's not even brought up anymore. I mean, they still allude to it in this NBC article, but it has nothing to do with what happened with Manafort. Not directly, not indirectly. I mean, you could say, look what the Hillary Clinton did with the uranium with Russia. Look at Podesta's ties to the Russians and Ukrainians. There's a story in Politico, if you remember, came out January 2017, Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfire. That was the headline. And it said, the Ukrainian government officials tried to help Hillary Clinton and undermine Trump by publicly questioning his fitness for office. They also disseminated documents implicating a top Trump aide in corruption and suggested they were investigating the matter, only to back away after the election. And they helped Clinton allies research damaging information on Trump and his advisors, a Politico investigation found. But see, that's okay. A Ukrainian-American operative who was consulting for the Democratic National Committee met with top officials in the Ukrainian embassy in Washington in an effort to expose ties between Trump, top campaign aide Paul Manafort, and Russia, according to people with direct knowledge of the situation. But see, now that doesn't mean they were colluding with Ukraine or foreign government. No, that can only be for the Trump people. The Ukrainian efforts had an impact in the race, helping to force Manafort's resignation and advancing the narrative that Trump's campaign was deeply connected to Ukraine's foe to the east, Russia. And that is no, that we can't talk about that. Not allowed to talk about that. Shh. And NBC News points out Manafort is a graduate of Georgetown Law School and an advisor to 5 Republican presidential campaigns. I guess all 5 of those were because of his ties to Russia and Ukraine, right? Oh, okay. Well, and that's my point. The way this stuff is being covered is not honest. Okay, now let's go to the Michael Cohen story. The Michael Cohen story today that he's pleading guilty, and this one's from CNBC.com. He struck a plea deal. We don't know all the details about it. He was looking for less jail time because they had been talking about 50 months. He was hoping for more like 30 to 36 months. New York Times had reported that federal authorities were looking into $20 million in loans for taxi businesses that were tied to Cohen. Were the Russians running the taxi company? No, but there was a Ukrainian. Oh, so, okay. Did the Russians collude on this and it had to do with Trump? No. Does this have to do with hacking of the DNC? No. Does this have to do with releasing emails? No. Does this have to do with some kind of fake news on Facebook sites that was supposed to help Trump? No. Nope. He agreed to plead guilty to 8 counts related to tax fraud. And now here's the part that's tied to Trump. Excessive campaign contributions and unlawful corporate contributions. So what's he talking about there? Here's what he says, quote, this is from Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer. I used a company under my control to pay $130,000 to a person to keep information from becoming public. That's what he told the judge about one of the payments. Cohen said he was later paid back by the candidate. The judge asked Cohen if he knew what he was doing was illegal. Cohen said yes. Now, $130,000 for a candidate, what they're saying is that's the hush money for Stormy Daniels, really named Stephanie Clifford, who allegedly had the affair with Trump and who was paid this hush money that Cohen and Trump were suing to over this non-disclosure agreement that, of course, she violated. So, wait a second. So, what we're talking about is that the stuff that's tied to President Trump from Michael Cohen is the hush money paid to Stormy Daniels, in that because it was done for the candidate, that it was a contribution to the candidate, and therefore they ran in violation of the maximum contribution you could give to a candidate, even though the candidate paid it back. Okay. Now, look, I'm not saying this is a good thing. I'm not at all. But what does that have to do with Russia? What does that have to do with the DNC's hacked emails? What does that have to do with Russia meddling in the election? The answer is precisely zero. And yet still the media is acting like, and the Democrats are acting like, aha, we got him. Really? Do you think so? 844-DIG-CHAT, get you on board. I'm going to tell you what I think this really does for Trump and against Trump in just a second. 844-DIG-CHAT, get you in. My name's Greg Knapp, filling in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
Are you PC and groupthink brainwashed? Time for a double detox shot of Chad.
And my name is Greg Knapp. I'm in for Chad on The Chad Benson Show. 844-DIG-CHAT, 844-DIG-CHAT. Trying to get us through this Paul Manafort conviction on 8 counts, 10 counts of mistrial, and he's got another trial coming. And the Michael Cohen, Trump's personal lawyer in the past, his plea deal. And how much is it going to hurt Trump, and how much is it tied to Trump? Well, as we went through it, the first thing is neither one of these cases has anything to do with Russian collusion or Russian meddling in the election or Russian hacking of the DNC or leaking of the emails to WikiLeaks. Not at all. And yet, NBC News really tried to make it seem like it did. I just went through that with you. It was amazing. However, obviously this isn't good for Trump. It's not good to have people who are around you being found guilty and pleading guilty. There's no doubt about that. There's no two ways to slice it. But if you think about it, Trump supporters, most of them aren't going to care because it has nothing to do with Russia. And they're going to think this was just, hey, keep digging until you find something and see if they can flip them against Trump. So they're not going to lose their support for Trump. Trump haters are going to use this to fuel their hate. And they're going to try to twist it into saying, aha, it is Russia, even though it's not. But then there's the people in the middle. And I think that this is going to hurt Trump with many of the people in the middle. And they're going to say, well, it may not be about Russia, but there's an awful lot of people around him who are in trouble. But there also might be people in the middle that go, you know what? This seems like they're really trying to take this president down when they haven't gotten anything that has anything to do with Russia around him. What do you think? How much is it going to hurt him? Now, there's also this coming out of Politico that Michael Cohen said he paid the hush money at Trump's direction. Now, they have it as candidate Trump's direction. All right? Here's what it says. Michael Cohen, President Donald Trump's former personal lawyer, stated today that Trump directed him to pay women to stay silent about damaging stories during the 2016 presidential campaign. I participated in the conduct of for the purposes of influencing the election. And that's what he's in trouble for. But I think most average people are going to go, well, yeah, we knew that. I mean, the Stormy Daniels story is old. Trump didn't want the story getting out of either an affair or an alleged affair, and so he settled with people as he's done all his life. And I think everyone... See, here's the thing that I don't think a lot of people get yet in the mainstream media. People knew what they were getting with President Trump. President Trump... Now, if this had happened to Mitt Romney, he loses all support. Because people see Mitt Romney as a squeaky clean guy who has been married to one woman and has never cheated on her and has an upstanding moral character. If he does this, then it's huge. I don't know anybody that thought Trump was a guy like Mitt Romney in the personal aspect of who he is. I think a dude who's been married multiple times and has been accused of having affair after affair after affair, I think most people realize this is the kind of guy they're getting, and what they decided was, it's the best we got right now. You know, maybe we need a guy who's a little different. Yeah, he's got his personal foibles. Yeah, I don't think his moral character is the best ever. Yeah, there's times I don't like what he says or tweets, but there are times that I like what he says and tweets because it's about time somebody said it. And we need somebody who will fight back. And we need somebody who's ready to do it a different way. Tired of the swamp being the swamp, being the swamp, being the swamp. We've always done it this way. We always do this way. Doesn't matter whether there's an R after the name or a D after the name. This is what's always going to happen. And maybe it's time to shake it up and move things. And that's why he won. People know that this is who Trump is and paying hush money and stuff like that. Is that going to bring him down? I really don't think so. You find something with collusion with Russia, now we got a different story, but this has nothing to do with that. Love your thoughts. 844-DIG-CHAD. Wait till you hear what they're telling college students they can't do now. Greg Knapp in for Chad Benson. Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent in thoughts and punk rock in life. It's the Chad Benson Show.
And my name is Greg Knapp filling in. You can join the program at 844-DIG-CHAD, 844-DIG-CHAD, and you're in. You can kick in on the Manafort situation, the Michael Cohen situation, President Trump, Russia, the media, whatever you want. You jump in at 844-DIG-CHAD. Our colleges and universities just keep getting crazier. And I've got a daughter now who's in her second year at university, and some of the things that I see going on there, I'm like, really, should I keep sending my money? But, you know, you feel like you're in a situation where there's almost nowhere you can send them anymore that isn't going to have this craziness. And if you don't get the college degree, you're not going to be able to get the job that you want. Now, I know college isn't for everybody, and college isn't as important as it used to be. I totally get that, and there are lots of jobs you can do without a college degree, but there are many jobs, unfortunately, where they still require a college degree, even though it's really not necessary to do the work. But they still want to see that you have a college degree, so you kind of keep paying the piper for that. Well, I take you to Delaware State University. This is from Fox News 6 in Dover, Delaware. Delaware State University, they have now told the students that during the winter months, there will be no snowball fighting. What? Yeah, snowball fighting is banned. That's what we're worried about at college. Well, yes, because sometimes people pack the snow really hard, and sometimes some of those snowballs are like ice balls, and sometimes people get hurt. Oh, you can't do that. So they're banning it. And they're also banning water guns and super soakers. Oh. By the way, it's in the same part of the Student Affairs Handbook, equal to being in the shower areas of members of the opposite sex. Well, who's to say it's the opposite sex? And threatening other students with violence or intimidating them. That's right in there with water guns, super soakers, and snowballs. Okay. Glad we're taking care of the important things at university. John wanted to jump in on the whole Paul Manafort situation. He found guilty of 8 counts. 10 counts are going to be mistrial. He's got another whole case to come. John, you are on the Chad Benson Show. My name's Greg Knapp, filling in. Go right ahead.
Hey, Greg, how's it going? I spoke with Chad once or twice about this. When is one of the Republicans going to start opening some investigations into all the other stuff that went on the other side? You had so much stuff that was just kind of skated over. There was the IRS thing. It lasted about a week. There was the gun running. That lasted a few weeks. There was the rigging of the Democratic campaign. That didn't last very long. You had the charges of misuse of funds to the Clinton Foundation that was supposed to go to Haiti that went to her daughter's wedding. Nothing was looked into that. There's just so much of the whole hashtag Me Too movement. Seems like everybody's involved in that, except the women that were raped by Bill Clinton. They're still being silenced. And when is some of the Republicans going to have some balls and step up and demand that some of this other stuff be looked into too? It's just been Russia for a freaking year and a half.
Well, I kind of agree with you on that, John, because even if we go to the Russian level, like I was talking about, Hillary, people are talking about, well, President Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., took a meeting with a Russian lawyer who said she had dirt on Hillary. Okay, that's not illegal. And like you said, John, then what about the other side? Hillary Rodham Clinton's campaign and the Democratic National Committee paid a British national to go and pay Russians to give him information that would harm President Trump at the time, candidate Trump. So why is it the worst thing in the world for Donald Trump Jr. to take this one meeting where nothing came out of it, and absolutely nothing wrong with the DNC and Hillary Rodham Clinton paying the guy that came up with the Trump dossier, which is second and third hearsay information from Russians that got money?
Exactly. And all the other stuff. You got just a week ago they came out that Dianne Feinstein's personal driver is a spy for China. I mean, there's just so much stuff on the other side, and I don't know if Republicans don't have any guts, if they just don't like Trump so much they just want him out of there. I don't know what the deal is, but there's so much stuff on the other side that is at least just as important as this thing they have going with Trump.
Well, let me ask you one more question on this, John. Okay, let me ask you this. Okay, first of all, I think we covered the Manafort thing. If Manafort, if he's guilty of this tax fraud and the money laundering and all the other stuff that he's involved with, fine. But that has absolutely zero to do with any Russian meddling in any election and anything to do with any Trump person being involved with that or anything to do with any DNC emails being hacked. None of that was in this case. So we got to make sure that that's clear. And actually nothing in the Manafort case had anything to do with Trump. So let's get that clear. But then we ask this question, John. President Trump, as president, can declassify anything. So talk about having some guts. Why doesn't he declassify the information on how these FISA warrants were asked for, how much of the dossier was used in that, who knew about it when, go back and look at the stuff that was going on with the Obama intelligence agencies when they were looking at American citizens when many are saying they, the ones that were unmasked and all that. Declassify all this stuff that really lets us know what was going on the other side. Why doesn't he do that? Because he can't.
I don't know, and I wish he would.
I think he's worried about it politically, what it would look like. But I think he's got to say, look, we're going to declassify everything. We'll redact names to protect anybody that needs to be protected. But the American people have to understand just what went on here, because it looks like to me you had the administration that was going out trying to do everything it could to stop the opposing candidate. And many of them are still doing it. Thanks, John. I appreciate the call.
And this whole Mueller witch hunt thing. I mean, the Clintons have skated on multiple Rose Law Firm, Whitewater. I mean, since they've entered politics, Hillary with the Watergate hearings, everything. I mean, they've skated and skated and skated and skated. And
well, and it's part of what makes people look at this, John, and see the double standard of the way that the media treats these types of issues, depending on whether there's an R or D after your name. And that's what's really ticking people off. And that's why when Trump goes after the media, it resonates with a lot of people because they see this. Because people can read multiple stories from multiple newspapers. They can go to different websites. They can see stuff that they never used to see before and realize that they're not being told the true story. And the whole story, I went through the way NBC painted this. They tried to make it seem like Paul Manafort, was just convicted of some, just found guilty by the jury of stuff that had to do with Russia. Thanks for the call. Look, I'll just go back to the 7th paragraph here in this NBC News story. The charges at issue in the Manafort trial, which began July 31st in Alexandria, Virginia, weren't directly related to Russian interference in the 2016 election, but painted a startling picture of a senior campaign figure who appears to have had the motive, means, and opportunity to help the Russians. This is a news article, not an opinion article. There's absolutely nothing in this trial about Manafort helping the Russians help President Trump win the election. Nada. And yet, that's the way they're presenting this. At some point, you've got to say either you have something on the president and his people colluding with Russia or you don't. Because what they're doing is they're going for stuff that has nothing to do with it. Stuff that happened years before Manafort was even around Trump. Now, the Cohen thing, paying off Stormy Daniels, that's a real thing. That's tied to the president. That's real. And I think that hurts Trump. But it doesn't have anything to do with Russia. 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board the program. 844-DIG-CHAD, and you are in. I also wanted to get you, I go from the college that's banning snowball fights, water guns, and super soakers to animal crackers. You love the animal crackers. Now, when you were a kid, I loved the animal crackers. The Barnum and Bailey circus on the front, and you eat the lion, and you eat the elephant, and you eat the giraffe, and, PETA's not happy. But they're not real animals. I know, but they look like animals. Well, you're telling me PETA's saying don't eat animal crackers? No, they haven't gone that far. But have you noticed the front of the box of the animal crackers? On the front of the box, they show these wild animals, and they're in a cage. There's a cage. There are bars in front of the animals. And so PETA has been working hard with Nabisco's parent company, Mondelez International. And they reached out to him and they said, circus animals are often mistreated and it's time to get them out of the cage. And so they've agreed. And from now on, when your children eat the animal crackers, they won't look at the box and think, what we need to do is go out and catch a wild animal and put it in a cage, because obviously that's what you think of when you eat an animal cracker. They will no longer think that. And they will now start thinking, what we need to do with these wild animals is eat one leg at a time, because that's the best way to eat an animal cracker. No, wait, that's not. When we see these wild animals, what we need to do is let them roam free everywhere in America. I don't know. What exactly are you trying to show them with the animal cracker box? That they shouldn't be in cages. Okay. I used to love animal crackers, and I don't like wild animals being in cages. I'll tell you, I really don't like zoos. Now, if the animal was injured and they're bringing the animal to take care of it, I get it. If the animal was being pushed out of its natural habitat and it was about to, die of starvation, I get it. But I just don't like seeing these wild animals in these small environments compared to where they roam in the wild. So I'm not a big zoo fan, and I understand what Pete is saying about keeping animals in cages. These are animal crackers. But it's about what it looks like. PETA says the new box perfectly reflects that our society no longer tolerates the caging and chaining of wild animals for circus shows. Really? That's what it shows? Yes. They've been working for 2 years on this to help them revamp their package. And now they can rest. No, they can't. They got other things they want to do. Let me get Joe in Florida. He wants to chime in on the Paul Manafort case as well. Joe, you were on the Chad Benson Show. My name's Greg Knapp. Go right ahead.
I'm just shocked, man. Really? A rich person cheated on his taxes? I've never heard of that before. A person in power slept with another woman? I mean, no president has ever done that, right? I mean, no. Clinton didn't do it. Kennedy didn't do it. Oh, my goodness. I'm shocked. Why are they going after this guy?
And, Joe, here's the thing that I was saying on the whole sleeping thing, and tell me if you agree. If this had been Mitt Romney and this came out, we would be shocked, and it would really hurt him with his supporters. But did anybody not know this about Trump when they voted for him?
It's stunning to me that you keep talking about a double standard. It's even a triple standard. They're holding him to such a high level that is so completely unrealistic. Look, do I think he should have cheated on his wife? No. Do I think people should cheat on their taxes? No. But I am the middle. I'm not a huge Trump supporter. I'm not against Trump. But these aren't things that matter to me.
Well,
Is
and
he
the other
doing the country right?
Yeah, and the other part, Joe, is it's not what this investigation was supposed to be about either, is it?
I don't think anybody anywhere knows what this investigation was supposed to be about, and that includes the people conducting the investigation.
Well, they didn't have to declare what it was about in terms of a crime before they started.
Thank goodness for our government.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you getting in. And Joe, I'm kind of where Joe is. I'm not a huge Trump supporter. I wanted Ted Cruz in the primary because I wanted the most conservative guy and most constitutional guy. And I think Ted Cruz is the most constitutional guy. I'm a constitutionalist. But he didn't win the primaries. So it was Trump or Hillary. And I wasn't going to vote for Hillary. And I do like a lot of Trump's policies. I'm not a big fan of his moral character. No. I'm not a big fan of the way he talks sometimes and the way he tweets sometimes. No. But I am a fan of his tax cuts. I am a fan of his cutting regulations. I am a fan of him trying to get fair trade. I don't know that tariffs are the best way to do it, but I'm willing to give him a little play there because he's right. We have been screwed on these trade deals. You go down the line, a lot of these policies. I do think that illegal immigration is a problem in this country. I do think that our police and immigration and customs people are getting a raw deal from the people who claim that they're Nazis and killers and all this other kind of crap. So, yeah, there are a lot of – so you're kind of – you're like, look, I knew who I was getting. And Hillary Clinton's personal character isn't any better. I mean, look what she did in aiding and abetting the destruction of these women that Bill Clinton is accused of raping, sexually harassing, and having affairs with, too. So I think Joe's right. For the average person, it may not be what the media thinks it's going to be. Love your calls. 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board the program. Did you see what's going on with South Africa right now? We'll get you that one in just a second. My name's Greg Knapp, in for Chad Benson. Chad Benson Show.
Welcome to Chad. No, not the country. The institution. The Chad Benson Show.
And my name is Greg Knapp, filling in for Chad. We've been talking about the Paul Manafort guilty verdicts on 8 counts, mistrial on 10, and about the Michael Cohen plea deal. None of them had anything to do with the so-called Russian colluding or Russian meddling in the elections. So how much is it going to hurt Trump? How much does it touch Trump? Mike wanted to jump in on this as well. Mike, you are on the Chad Benson Show. Go right ahead. Hey, Mike. All right. Maybe we have trouble getting Mike. 844-DIG-CHAD if you want to get into the program so you can be a part of it as well. And if you're just joining us, of course, the whole point that I was trying to get to is none of the accounts against Manafort had anything to do with Russia. None of the investigation in Cohen and the plea deal with him had anything to do with Russia. The only thing that had to do with Trump is Cohen pleading that, yes, Trump directed me to pay $130,000 to someone to be quiet about an alleged affair. And that was to influence the election. What he means by that is to keep the story out of the news because it might hurt his election chances. To which you say, well, yeah, that's not a good thing. But is it something that is going to destroy Trump? Does this mean impeachment? Or is this something that people kind of thought, well, yeah, I already kind of knew that. It's kind of baked into the cake now with the whole Stormy Daniels thing. Got this story coming out of South Africa. South Africa is now starting to just take land from white landowners without money, without compensation. The African National Congress feels pushed by the far-left economic freedom fighters to start taking money from white landowners, taking land from white landowners and just giving it to black people in South Africa. And the reason they say is, hey, you look back to the apartheid era, and there were areas where black people couldn't buy land, and it's not fair. And there were black people in South Africa who had their land forcibly seized by the apartheid regime. So two wrongs make a right, except for the fact that a lot of the people that they're talking about taking the land from had nothing to do with this. They actually did pay for their land and the unintended consequences that come from it. Are there better ways to do this instead of ending up like Zimbabwe or Cuba or Venezuela? Yeah, one of the problems is the ANC that's been running the government for a long time now in South Africa. The economy grew only 1% last year. Unemployment is at 27%. And they're feeling like they got to do something to keep the people happy. And so they're talking about, let's just give them some land that we take from these white people. The thing is, black South Africans control 39% to 50% of the nation's land. John Fund writing on this in National Review. Not less than 10%, as the EFF claims. And most of the black people say that they would rather have money than the land because they don't want to be farmers and wouldn't know what to do with it because that's not who they are. So there's a couple different approaches, including redistributing the state-owned land. And we can get into more details on this in a minute. We will. My name is Greg Knapp. I'm in for Chad Benson, 844-DIG-CHAD on The Chad Benson Show.
This is The Chad Benson Show. Independent in thoughts and punk rock in life. It's The Chad Benson Show.
Hey, how you doing? My name's Greg Knapp. I'm filling in for Chad on The Chad Benson Show. Yeah, we're talking about what's going on with Paul Manafort and what's going on with Michael Cohen and what's going on with President Trump in relation to that. And then we got a lot of other things we want to get into. So, yeah, the headlines are that Michael Cohen has pleaded guilty, admitting to making illegal payments at the direction of a candidate to influence an election. And what it comes down to is Stormy Daniels. And so what Cohen has pleaded guilty to, he said to the judge that Trump directed him to pay women to stay silent about damaging stories during the 2016 presidential campaign. Quote, I participated in the conduct for the purposes of influencing the election. That's what he told the court. He's trying to get maybe 30, 36 months instead of 5 years. And so that's what he told him. So does it have anything to do with Russia? No. Russian meddling in the election? No. Russian hacking of the DNC? No. With anybody from Trump or the Trump campaign working with the Russians to do any of that? No. It has to do with hush money for an alleged affair of candidate Trump even before he was candidate Trump? Yes. Oh, so the illegality about it would be that it's too much money to help a candidate, right? Yes. So we're talking about an election law violation in terms of donations? Yes. Even though it was paid back? Yes. Oh, that's it? And that's why people are chanting, lock him up? And that's what you think is going to lead to impeachment? Now, as I say, I'm not a big fan of Trump's moral character and what he's done with his wives and what he may or may not have done with these alleged affairs. But did anybody think that Trump was pure as the driven snow when it came to that when they elected him? Nope. All right, so there's that one. So then we move on to the Paul Manafort one, where Manafort is convicted on 8 counts, a mistrial declared on the 10 other charges, and not a single one of these counts has anything to do with Russian meddling in the election, Russian hacking into the DNC, Russian leaking emails to the press, nothing. It has to do with Paul Manafort and his taxes and fraud and loans, but it doesn't have anything to do with President Trump or anybody in his campaign and Russian meddling with the election. Okay, that's it? Really? No, there's more to come. Okay, well, ready for it. Let's get it moving. 844-DIG-CHAD. We'll take your calls on that all show long if you want to chime in on that. 844-DIG-CHAD. And then I also was just telling you about what's going on in South Africa because it's interesting. It's not being covered by the mainstream media. We have a government now that is saying, We have the right to seize land from white people. And it's time to cut the throats of white people. That's what they're saying in their government. Okay? Now, they meant that figuratively, I'm sure. But the media is not covering this. Newsbusters pointed out that, according to the Johannesburg-based city press, the South African government has begun the process of expropriating 2 game farms. The government putting the plan into motion after the owners rejected offers by the state to purchase their land because they wanted to offer them 10 cents on the dollar for their land. Instead of $10 million, $1 million. Can't imagine why they would say no. The networks had plenty of time to talk about it in last night's broadcast, and they didn't. Not a single one. Cable news outlets CNN and MSNBC also did not cover it. As far as print media, Newsweek appeared to be the only widely distributed American publication to have mentioned the story. Now, this was Newsbusters late last night, so I don't know if they've done it anymore today. But it's interesting, isn't it? Why would you not cover that? It's kind of a big deal. Look what happened to Zimbabwe and how it's destroyed its economy. Look what's happened with Cuba and Venezuela when you start just grabbing land. Now, there's definite history of problems with the land in South Africa. Under apartheid, there were black people who were having their land seized. There were areas in the apartheid South Africa where black people could not purchase land. A lot of injustice done. Is the answer just to seize the land of white people now, especially white people that had nothing to do with it? Or is there a better way to do it? And as John Fund points out, there are a couple ways that people are talking about that could be better. You could break up the crony capitalist arrangements and lift burdens on small businesses. Now, Judith February is a visiting fellow at the Witt School of Governance and asked this: why has there not been a discussion about the redistribution of state-owned land? The state is the largest owner of unused land in the country. And then there's another one. Temba Nolashungu is with the Free Market Foundation in Johannesburg. And he told John Fund that under a prototype project that he's run with private funding, he has helped black South Africans regain title to property they occupied but could not own under apartheid. Quote, our project, called Kayalam, is an approach far more targeted to individual cases. It supplements government efforts and preserves the rule of law. You know, the other thing it does, it does away with these unintended consequences. Right now, land that is owned by white people in South Africa is worth virtually nothing. Would you go buy land right now from a white person in South Africa when that land could be seized from you at any moment without any compensation by the government? And the people that own that land, what are they thinking right now? Well, what should I even do? I'm certainly not going to improve this land. I'm not going to do anything that would add value to this land because it could just be taken from me in a heartbeat. I don't even know if I want to farm this land right now because right about the time when my crop is about to come in, they could come take it from me. And as John Fund points out, if the continent's biggest economic engine, Africa's biggest economic engine, moves more and more in the direction of Zimbabwe, economic growth, investor confidence, and most important, average people going about their daily lives will suffer not only in South Africa, but in the nearby countries with which it trades and does business. Yeah, seizing land like this is not going to improve their economy. It's not going to help the average black South African. It's not going to help their country. It's not going to help the region. It's not going to help the continent. But it's going to make people feel good who say, yeah, steal the land. What do you think? And it's not being talked about because, well, you know, it doesn't fit the narrative we want to talk about. Oh, okay. It's kind of important, though, isn't it? No, not important at all. Trump is going to coal country, and he's trying to help a Republican win a Senate seat in West Virginia. And one of the things that Trump has always talked about is trying to bring back coal and coal-powered plants and just the entire coal industry. And so the EPA under President Trump announced today that it's going to replace the Obama-era CCP, so-called Clean Power Plan, with a more lenient rule. Now, that would allow more coal plants and mines to stay open. They were closing under the CPP because what they were essentially saying is, look, if you look at those Obama rules on coal-fired power plants, you can't build a new one and meet what it says you have to meet and actually make money at it. In fact, President Obama, when he was candidate Obama, admitted this. Listen to President Obama talking about coal-fired power plants.
If somebody wants to build a coal-powered plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted.
So he didn't like CO2 coming out of it. He wasn't even talking about real pollution. And he said it was going to make you bankrupt. And then you can't figure out why coal miners are a little upset. So Trump said, no, we're going to reverse that. Trump tweeted out, big rally tonight in West Virginia. Patrick Morrisey is running a great race for the U.S. Senate. I have done so much for West Virginia. It's always going to be about Trump. Against all odds, and having Patrick, a real fighter by my side, would make things so much easier. See you later. Clean coal. And so the Obama administration, of course, those people, they're really mad. They can't believe it. Now, what they wanted was, with Obama regulations, to cut emissions 35% below 2005 levels by the year 2030. It would close a lot of plants. Or it would make you bankrupt if you wanted to run one. You just couldn't do it. And so this will allow more coal-fired power plants to stay open, and it will allow more coal mines to stay open. Now, does that mean that none of them will close? No. Coal is not what it used to be. There's so much more natural gas now. You've got the fracking with the natural gas and the oil. But there is still an awful lot of coal in the ground that we can use, and an awful lot of uses for coal, including exporting it. Well, don't you understand? Coal will kill people. The New York Times was putting out this story. The EPA's proposal to replace the Obama-era coal plant regulations could lead to as many as 1,400 premature deaths a year from air pollution. Really? Well, it depends on which EPA study you're looking at and what level of particulate you're talking about. So it really could be somewhere between 110 premature deaths all the way up to 1,400 premature deaths per year. Well, so what? Even if it's one, it's worth it. Okay, then let me ask you this. Then shouldn't we ban all coal plants? I mean, if the EPA is right and coal-fired power plants kill people prematurely, they die early. You know, they don't, it's not like they just die. They die early, though, right? So you're taking away years of people's lives. Then we should just ban all coal-fired power plants, right? The problem is there's lots of things that we do that take people's lives, and we decide, well, it's worth it. No, we don't. What are you talking about? Okay. 43,000 people die on our roads every year. Why don't we drop the speed limit to 10 miles an hour? Well, that's ridiculous. Well, wait a second. If it could save just one life, wouldn't it be worth it? I mean, if we drive 10 miles an hour and get in a wreck in a car, we're not dead. I mean, sure, it'll take a little bit longer to get to work. Sure, it'll take a little bit longer to go pick up your groceries. Sure, it'll take a little bit longer to get the kid to school. Sure, it'll take a little bit longer to do everything. What do you mean a little bit? It'll be a lot. It'll be like 6, 7 times as long. But if it saves just one life, wouldn't it be worth it? And by the way, it's not just saving one life. We'd save 43,000 lives a year. Right? Why don't we do it? Because we did a cost-benefit analysis, and we determined the cost of people dying in cars, traveling at higher rates of speed, is worth it because we want to get places faster. I mean, really, that's it. Boil it down, and that's it. Because if we really cared, we would change the speed limit to 10 miles an hour. But see, there are also unintended consequences. If you can only drive 10 miles an hour, would people die because you're driving too slow? I mean, trying to get somebody to an emergency room at 10 miles an hour. I mean, you always got to look at unintended consequences. What are the unintended consequences of these coal mines and coal-fired power plants closing? And the people who work there losing their jobs and getting depressed and committing suicide or getting hooked on opiates or becoming alcoholics or, I mean, what? And everybody without a job becomes that? No, but some do. Could it be 100 a year? I don't know. There are unintended consequences that always come up from these decisions. And that's the part that, again, the media doesn't give you the full story on. 844-DIG-CHAD gets you on board the program. 844-DIG-CHAD, and you are in. Speaking about the media, Victor Davis Hanson had a great bit on this a little while ago I want to get you to in just a second. My name is Greg Knapp, in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
Take a fake news break. Check out the really important news of the day at our website, ChadBensonShow.com. Once there, click on Chad's free podcast and get real. The Chad Benson Show, where truth and the American way live. Print free.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Greg Knapp, in for Chad on The Chad Benson Show. 844-DIG-CHAD gets you in. 844-DIG-CHAD. In just a minute, I'm going to get you this new medical term out of the San Francisco-based medical site Healthline that's going to make your night. I'm just telling you, it's pretty good. But first, we were talking about this double standard that's going on in our media on the way that they're treating President Trump compared to the way they treated President Obama, to the way they're treating President Trump, to the way they handled candidate Hillary, in looking at their possible scandals and their real scandals. And Victor Davis Hanson was on with Fox News not too long ago, just a couple nights ago. And I love what he said about this. He said there's a reason people don't trust the media anymore. He said, I think the larger narrative is that we've reached the point in American society where the media really does believe that the noble aim of trust or justice or fairness requires almost any means necessary. It's not just my view. The Shorenstein Center at Harvard said 89 and 90% of the press coverage was biased. We know the political donations go one way from the journalists to another from another study. So, what he's talking about here is the media has been 90% negative against President Trump. And there are members of the media on the record saying this president is so wrong that we've got to throw journalistic integrity out the window. We can't just cover him fairly. We have to do something to stop him. Same kind of thing some of those people at the FBI said, isn't it? Back to Victor Davis Hanson, he said, when you look at journalists in the past, or in the Obama administration, the WikiLeaks, the Podesta Trove, even the recent hiring of Sarah Jong at the New York Times, despite her racist paper trail or her Twitter trailer, and you get this image. Again, it's not mine. It's not yours. People who are very elegant on the liberal side have said, Jorge Ramos, the editor of the New York Times, Jim Rutenberg of the New York Times, I think even Christiane Amanpour, that Trump poses such a threat that the old traditionalist ethos no longer are required. He's right. That's exactly what they've said. So he goes on. What Trump hasn't done, this is rhetoric. He's fought back at the media, what he calls fake news, but he has not jailed 2 reporters like JFK did. He did not arrest Associated Press reporters in the way Obama did, with James Rosen at Fox News, like Obama did. He didn't introduce a bill like the Roosevelt allies in Congress did, called the libel bill to stifle opposition, or what Hillary Clinton did in 2008 when she stopped that Hillary movie, that documentary. Remember that one? That's Citizens United. That's what the whole case was about. And the final tragedy is what's not being reported. We have the 4th highest member of the DOJ, Bruce Orr, who was colluding with Fusion GPS after the election to undermine the president. We just had Dianne Feinstein admit that for 20 years, her chauffeur was a spy for the Chinese government. And she's one of the ranking members of the Senate Intelligence Committee. And her husband has extensive business in China, and that's not news. So people don't trust the media anymore. That's an empirical fact. Do you? 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. 844-DIG-CHAD. A new San Francisco-based medical site has a new name for a body part. We'll tell you all about it in just a second. My name's Greg Knapp, in for Chad on The Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent in thoughts and punk rock in life. It's the Chad Benson Show.
My name is Greg Knapp. I'm in for Chad on the Chad Benson Show. You can jump in at 844-DIG-CHAD, 844-DIG-CHAD, and you are in online. It's thechadshow.com. San Francisco has, well, it's based in San Francisco. It's a medical site called Healthline. Now, it competes with WebMD, and it has a new safe sex guide up, and it's for the LGBTQIA community. Hey, you're making up those last letters. I am not making up those last letters. That's what it is now. It's LGBTQIA. I think the Q is questioning. I don't know what the I and the A are. I'm sorry. But it's LGBTQIA, and it's a safe sex guide in partnership and with Advocates for Youth. And they say the problem is that sex curriculum has not really benefited everyone. And some of the words for human body parts, and they rub people the wrong way. Was that a pun? Are you trying to be funny? I didn't mean anything by that at all, and I apologize. So here's what the guide says. These guides often unnecessarily gender body parts as being male parts and female parts, and refer to sex with women or sex with men, excluding those who identify as non-binary. Many individuals don't see body parts as having a gender. People have gender. So one of the things they want to do is get rid of the word vagina. Huh? Okay, this is a little bit sexual here in the context of what we're talking about, so if you have little kids in the car, you've been warned. It says, as a result, the notion that a penis is exclusively a male body part and a vulva is exclusively a female part is inaccurate. For the purposes of this guide, we'll refer to the vagina as the front hole instead of solely using the medical term vagina. Wait, what? Wait, what? Wait, front hole? That's the more accurate term? Is this a joke? Is this from The Onion? We got to look this up. This can't be right. No, some trans and non-binary identified people assigned female at birth enjoy being the receptor of penetrative sex, but experience gender dysphoria when that part of their body is referred to using a word that society and professional communities often associate with femaleness. An alternative that's becoming increasingly popular in trans and queer communities is front hole. All right? So from now on, that's what I want you to call that, so that you don't violate someone's safe space. Is that a safe space? I don't know. You can't call it that either. It's not a safe space. It's a front hole. 844-DIG-CHAD gets you on board the program. I can't make these things up. I can't make up these stories. If I was just to sit around and say, try and make up a funny story for The Onion, I couldn't come up with a story that good. And it's real life. That's what makes it even funnier. It's like Seinfeld. It's real life, so it's funny. President Trump was going after the Democrats for being soft on crime when he gave this little talk about immigration customs enforcement, about our borders, about the illegal immigration laws. Oh, and that ties right into what's going on now, where we're finding out what happened to that college student who went missing in Iowa. I'm sure you've been following that story, and this ties right into it. Molly Tibbet, her suspected murderer, because they found her remains today, her suspected murderer has been identified as a 24-year-old illegal alien, and her body was found in a cornfield. But you can't talk about that. We have murderers, too. What are you trying to say, that all illegal aliens are murderers? Not saying that at all. What we're saying is some of them are. And unfortunately, murdering is a job Americans will do. We got plenty of murderers. We don't need to allow more in. And that's one of the problems that we're having. There are people coming across illegally into this country who are violent. And we're not doing enough to stop it, and that's what President Trump has been talking about. But President Trump started out, though, by talking about the Portland, Oregon mayor, Ted Wheeler. I don't know if you've been following this story, but there was an Occupy movement in Portland a while ago, and they were surrounding the Immigration and Customs Enforcement building. And they were harassing the people. They were shouting all kinds of obscenities at them. They were calling the black immigration customs officers and the Hispanic officers all kinds of racial slurs. This is what the Occupy people were doing, the ones that want to ban ICE and disband it. And the reports that were coming out of Portland from the Immigration and Customs Enforcement people were that the mayor had ordered the police to stand down. Now, the mayor says, no, I didn't order police to stand down. I simply said that they shouldn't get involved with what's going on at this federal building because ICE has its own federal police force. So he told them to stand down. Well, I mean, not stand down. Well, that's what the people who were there said. And that's why you had agency employees send a cease and desist letter to Portland, Oregon, late July on this. The Oregon City, Portland, the forefront of the anti-ICE protests. And the ICE people say that he told the police to stand down and let the protesters be allowed to do whatever they wanted. They shut down the building. They built an encampment on nearby land. They mounted a harassment campaign. Some of the employees were denied police assistance even after they'd left the ICE building. One man, a disabled Marine veteran, was followed and confronted as he went to pick up his daughter. They scratched his car. They slashed his tires. So when the mayor gave the order the police would not support ICE employees trapped in the facility, he turned the lives of our employees over to an angry mob. That's Chris Crane, president of the National ICE Council. And it had its lawyers send the cease and desist letter. The mayor stated publicly that he supported the protests, which are supposed to be about protecting immigrant families. But what about the moms and dads that we had working in that building? What about their kids? This is from the Washington Times. These are questions that we'll be expecting the mayor and the city of Portland to be answering. Well, the city says, oh, we didn't do that. No. Well, here's a little bit from President Trump going after him. Okay? Cut one from President Trump.
Last month, the mayor of Portland, Oregon, shamefully ordered local police to stand down, leaving federal law enforcement officers to face an angry mob of violent people.
That's what he was referring to. Now, of course, the Democrat, no. We had nothing to do with that. It wasn't stand down. It was just the police shouldn't get involved with that. Isn't that the same thing? And people were being assaulted. Not even just people at ICE, but some of the people who were trying to serve ICE lunch. You got to read these stories. It's unbelievable. The mayor, Ted Wheeler, this is the kind of stuff that he had said. Listen to Cut 8 about the Occupy ICE movement.
I want to be clear that as police commissioner, we do not police based on the content of speech. In this case, I've consistently stated that I do not want the Portland Police Bureau engaged in securing federal property that houses a federal agency with its own federal police force.
So, in other words, you guys do whatever you want and let the feds work it out. So even when these people were calling saying, hey, look, we need your help. These guys are not even letting us out of the building. Nope, you got your own federal police force. And it took them calling in the feds to get this under control. Isn't that amazing? So that's what Donald Trump's talking about. Then he moves on to talking about the Democrats that want to abolish ICE. Cut 2.
Leading members of the Democrat Party have even launched a campaign to abolish ICE. In other words, they want to abolish America's borders.
You got Democrat Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, New York. She says, yes, let's abolish ICE. Elizabeth Warren, Democrat. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, New York socialist, wants ICE abolished. Bernie Sanders has talked about abolishing ICE. I mean, on and on. So Trump is on a roll here saying, look, we actually support law enforcement. Cut 3.
We condemn these shameful attacks on our great law enforcement. Any politician who puts criminal aliens before American citizens should find a new line of work because it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
And then Trump went on to talk about what Governor Cuomo had said just recently about America was never really that great. Let's hear that.
And any politicians that get up and say that our country was never great, you heard that. I think that's the end of that career.
So the polls aren't looking good for it. We'll see if that's the end of his career. And then And then he talks about the changes in the immigration law that we need and what the Democrats are doing about that. Cut 5.
Congressional Democrats have opposed Kate's law, opposed legislation to crack down on MS-13 thugs, and supported deadly sanctuary cities, which are a disaster and which are becoming, on a weekly basis, more and more unpopular with the public. A lot has happened in the last 2 years. Last month, House Democrats even boycotted a resolution supporting our brave ICE officers and agents. But I will say this, the Republicans were with you all the way, all the way.
That's a winner for most Americans think that our officers are trying their best to keep law and order in this country. Yeah, there are some bad police officers. There are some bad ICE officers. There are some bad teachers. There are some bad lawyers. There are some bad doctors. There are some bad whatever. And you want to root those people out. But the vast majority of these people are serving because they want to make a positive difference in this country and protect the law-abiding people. They don't care what color you are. They don't care what ethnicity you are. They care about helping you. And then Trump talks about how the media says there's a blue wave coming in the midterm elections, and he sees it a little differently. Cut 6.
I think we're going to do very well in the midterms, and this is one of the very big reasons. The fact is people respect law and order, and they love our law enforcement. And I think we're going to have much more of a red wave than what you're going to see as a phony blue wave. Blue wave means crime. It means open borders. Not good.
So he's running on, hey, look, if you elect all the Democrats, it's crime and open borders. And if you elect the Republicans, it's law and order. And it's borders and it's nation. It's America first. What do you think? Does that resonate? 844-DIG-CHAD, 844-DIG-CHAD. And the final thing Trump threw out there is the people that claim to be social justice warriors, they're really not working for social justice when they attack ICE. Go ahead.
The extremists who attack ICE and CBC like to portray themselves as champions of social justice. They are not. But their radical policies are the ultimate injustice.
Yep, I think something went wrong with the audio. That's all right, but you kind of got the flavor of what he's saying here. These guys are actually harming justice. They're not helping it. Does that resonate with you? Do you think that's something that resonates with the American people and will be something that will bring in more votes? See, and this goes right to what's going on with Antifa. Antifa in Portland. I'm sure you saw this story today. Antifa, the ones who claim to be anti-fascist. In Portland, they beat up a guy who was carrying an American flag. The guy happened to be a Bernie Sanders supporter. But it didn't matter. He's carrying an American flag. He's a fascist. According to Antifa, you carry an American flag at a protest, and you are a fascist. Of course, the United States of America is the country that stopped fascism. But according to Antifa, you're the fascist. Oh, I got some details on this one in just a second for you. 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board the program. 844-DIG-CHAD. My name's Greg Knapp, in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
Feel free to punk this punk rocker any time of the day or night. Reach Chad on Twitter at Chad Benson Show and on Instagram at Chad Benson Show. And oh yeah, the Chad Benson Show on Facebook too. Punk that.
My name's Greg Knapp, in for Chad on the Chad Benson Show, 844-DIG-CHAD. And we just went back and looked at that San Francisco-based medical site Healthline, and it's updated now. Some of you may be coming here because you heard that we have invented a new word for vagina. I'm paraphrasing here. That we invented this new word for vagina, front hole. Well, that is not true. This word has been used by other, and then they list a few different groups. So, in other words, of course that's what we're calling it, but we're not saying we invented it. That's fake news. All right. Just reading right from their own thing. The notion that a penis is exclusively a male body part and a vulva is exclusively a female part is inaccurate. For the purposes of this guide, we'll refer to the vagina as the front hole, instead of solely using the medical term vagina. So, all our lives we were told, hey, you kids, quit making up funny names for that stuff. Use the real names. And now we're told, hey, quit using the real names for that. Make up some funny stuff. We didn't make it up. Those of you that are saying on talk radio that we made it up, you are not telling the truth. Other people made it up. We're using it, but we didn't make it up. Okay. 844-DIG-CHAD gets you in. So I was telling you about what happened in Portland, Oregon. This Bernie supporter gets smacked in the back of the head. He had to go to the doctor, and he needed 4 staples to close a 3-inch gash in the back of his head. 2 days recovering from a concussion. The guy's a Bernie Sanders supporter. He went to this counter-protest in Portland. He said, I was there to counter-protest against that conservative group, and I brought down my flag, because even though it's usually conservative groups that hold the flag, I want to take that flag back. Well, yeah, true conservatives, not racist, true conservatives love what the American flag stands for, and really all Americans should, shouldn't they? But see, the far left doesn't. The far left hates the American flag. The far left thinks America has never been great. Worse, they think America's horrible. I had a caller like that last week. America's horrible. So, no, when they see an American flag, they don't think you're part of them. He said, I was walking with the flag, and I got some odd looks, but I didn't have any problems until a group began marching toward the park, and 2 people dressed in black and covering their faces approached him. Now, this is the group that he's protesting with, counter-protesting with. He's on their side. They came up and said, give me that fascist symbol. It was the American flag, so he refused. So then they tried to rip the flag from his hands. Another masked counter-protester approached him, starts hitting him from behind with a weapon concealed in black fabric, and eventually hit him in the back of the head, and he collapsed to the ground. He said, my bones turned to jello and I just went down. His name is Paul Welch. I remember thinking there was a very good chance that I could be beaten to death. But remember, it was a mostly peaceful protest. There's video of this. Welch said he felt conflicted and disappointed because he'd gone to the rally to show, quote, a liberal free Portland, or any major city really, is much more American and much more numerous and strong than any of these interloping groups. He said, it strikes me as the worst sort of political theater. Talking about what happened to him, getting hit in the head and having his flag stolen. It's kind of like you're playing into your opponent's hand when you do that sort of thing. That's not what I was there for. You think? The spokesperson for the group organizing the counter-protest declined to comment. But you mean she wouldn't condemn the people who beat this guy? No. Declined to comment. That's from the Oregon Live newspaper. Wow. Doesn't that tell you everything you need to know? 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. We'll get you the latest on Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen. My name's Greg Knapp. I'm in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
This is The Chad Benson Show. Independent in thoughts and punk rock in life. It's The Chad Benson Show.
Hey, how you doing? My name's Greg Knapp. I'm in for Chad on The Chad Benson Show. 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. 844-DIG-CHAD. You know, sometimes I just look at the headlines and I think, wow, we are living in a crazy, crazy time. And I also imagine what people in third world countries must think of some of the things that we get excited about. I mean, you've heard the phrase, first world problem. You complain about something. I cannot believe that I only have 1 bar on my cell phone right now. I can't even handle it. How am I going to post to Instagram, right? And somebody's, in the poor part of India and doesn't have enough rice to eat and is about to starve to death. Or, you could just go to Venezuela and you're going to be even worse. Well, I see the story on the New York Times today. Here's the headline. Company is offering fraternity. What's fraternity leave? What's fraternity leave? Fur, like fur on your pet? like maternity, paternity. This is fraternity for pet owners. You got to be kidding. We'll get into it. Yeah, I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. I cannot make stories up that are better than the real news. For instance, let's look at what happened today. You've got the jury coming back, giving the Paul Manafort verdict at almost the exact same time that Michael Cohen is pleading guilty. I mean, who would have... How do you have both those things happening at once? It's amazing. The world is a crazy, crazy place. So then let's get into what that really means. Because, again, it really depends on how you're reading this and where you're getting your news on what you think of Paul Manafort being found guilty on 8 counts and not having a mistrial on the other counts. Because NBC News reported it very interestingly earlier today. And I just want to walk you through it, and you tell me if you think this is fair and balanced. NBC News. Manafort convicted on 8 counts. Mistrial declared on 10 other charges. The trial was the first public test of a special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation in possible Russian meddling and obstruction of justice by Trump. It was what? Yeah, it was the first public test of special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation in possible Russian meddling and obstruction of justice by Trump. Except that none of the charges had anything to do with those two things. There's not a single charge here that he was found guilty of or there was a mistrial of that had anything to do with possible Russian meddling in the election. Not a single charge had anything to do with possible obstruction of justice by Trump. So how can your first headline of the story be something that wasn't even in the trial? Well, sure, maybe that wasn't in the trial, but everybody knows that this was really about trying to get Paul Manafort to flip on President Trump so that we could actually get to the Russian meddling and get to the obstruction of justice. So, sure, maybe that wasn't the charge, but we all know, wink, wink, nod, nod, what this was really about. That's not news. This is not an opinion piece. This is supposed to be NBC News. And this is why people say, like, Trump says fake news, and they're not telling you the truth. But how many people do you know? I know you're paying attention to the news. I know you understand that Paul Manafort trial didn't have a single count that had anything to do with Russian meddling in the election. And I know you know not a single count had anything to do with alleged obstruction of justice by President Trump. But how many people who aren't following the news as closely as you think that this is the first person found guilty with Russian collusion? How many people do you know that probably think that? I know people. I have Democrat friends that have already told me, well, look at all these people that are, being indicted and charged in this Mueller investigation. It just shows you that Trump was involved with the Russian collusion. So you realize the Michael Cohen thing isn't even, that's even been passed on by Robert Mueller. That was passed on to different federal prosecutors. Doesn't matter. You realize that it had nothing to do with Russian collusion or Russian meddling in the election or Russian meddling into the DNC emails or releasing them to WikiLeaks. What do you mean? Oh, yeah, it did. No, it didn't. Read the actual charges. I mean, you get down to the 7th paragraph of this NBC article, and they finally mention that. The charges at issue in the Manafort trial weren't directly related to Russian interference in the 2016 election. Not only were they not directly related, they weren't even indirectly related. They were on things that happened years before that had absolutely nothing to do with President Trump or the election. But they go on. The charges at issue in the Manafort trial weren't directly related to Russian interference in the 2016 election, but painted a startling picture of a senior campaign figure who appears to have had the motive, means, and opportunity to help the Russians. Let me translate. No, there's no charges here of anything to do with the Russian election meddling, but there could have been. What? Like I said, you could have said the same thing about Hillary Clinton's campaign with her ties to our uranium and the Russians, to Podesta and the Ukrainians, to the piece that was in Politico that was back in January that said Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfire, and it said a Ukrainian-American operative who was consulting for the Democratic National Committee met with top officials in the Ukrainian embassy in Washington in an effort to expose ties between Trump, top campaign aide Paul Manafort, and Russia, according to people with direct knowledge of the situation. This is the Politico story. The Ukrainian efforts had an impact in the race, helping to force Manafort's resignation and advancing the narrative that Trump's campaign was deeply connected to Ukraine's foe to the east, Russia. But they were far less concerted or centrally directed than Russians' alleged hacking and dissemination of Democratic emails. So that doesn't count. We're not going to talk about that. No. But listen, I know that there were no charges in this Paul Manafort case that had anything to do with the Russian meddling or obstruction of justice, but it's still the first public test of that. How? Now, again, I'm not the huge supporter of Trump. He wasn't my first choice for president. But if we're going to be honest about this, we should at least be honest about it. This case has nothing to do with President Trump. This case is all about Paul Manafort. Now, the Michael Cohen case we'll get to in a second, that does include President Trump. But this Paul Manafort case has nothing to do with Trump, nothing to do with Russian election meddling, nothing to do with Russian hacking of the DNC, nothing to do with Russian leaking of emails to the media and to WikiLeaks. Nothing. And yet, here's NBC News trying to link it. And so are so many other mainstream media outlets. I mean, it's amazing. The special counsel was vindicated, but the victory wasn't total. The special counsel was not vindicated for a Russian collusion investigation. It was vindicated for going after Paul Manafort for his IRS problems and fraud charges. But this is why you're not supposed to have an unlimited investigation by the federal government with unlimited money, unlimited power, unlimited time, and not even have a defined crime to start it with. Imagine federal prosecutors doing that to you in your life. Whatever happened to fruit of the poison tree? Remember that? That's a big deal in our legal system, that you can't use illegal means to get information on somebody and then charge them with a crime for it. In other words, you can't bust into somebody's house without a warrant, find drugs, and then charge them with a drug crime and expect to get the conviction. It's going to be thrown out because you violated the law in going into the house without a warrant. So if you start your investigation looking for Russian collusion when you didn't have any evidence of it to begin with, and what you used as evidence came from a so-called dossier that was paid for by the opposing candidate and the opposing candidate's party to a foreign national who then paid Russians, and that's what started the entire investigation that had nothing to do with this, can you still use the evidence? Well, yeah, our court has said yes, you can. Nice, huh? Everybody's being treated fairly in this, aren't they? So back to the NBC story. It says Manafort came to Trump's campaign with deep ties to Russian figures. And he, as if that means, now remember, it was the Democrats up until this news came out that the Russians were trying to hack the DNC. It was the Democrats that said that the Russians were great. It was President Obama that was talking to Medvedev saying, hey, this is my last election and I'll have a lot more flexibility afterwards. And oh, yeah, I'll relay that to Putin. Oh, yeah. They were the ones that wanted the reset button. They were the ones that Mitt Romney said, hey, Russia's our biggest geopolitical foe. They said, oh, yeah, the 80s called. They want their foreign policy back. There until this came out. Then all of a sudden, oh, man, Trump had people on that had ties to Russia. So did Hillary. Yeah, but that doesn't matter. Totally different. This is a guy who advised 5 Republican presidential campaigns. That doesn't matter. The reason Trump had him was because of his ties to Russia. Does this sound fair to you? He came to the Trump campaign with deep ties to Russian figures, and he was the only non-Trump family member from the campaign team to participate in the June 2016 Trump Tower meeting with a Russian lawyer, which was set up on the premise of incriminating information about Trump's opponent. That would be Hillary Clinton. Yeah, that's true, and there's nothing illegal about that at all. Somebody called you, hey, we got dirt on your opponent here. You want to meet with us? Yeah. And they didn't get any information. They didn't use it. But the Hillary Clinton campaign didn't just take a phone call from somebody. They actually paid somebody to pay Russians to dig up dirt on President Trump, then candidate Trump. Which one's worse? Hillary Rodham Clinton's campaign and the DNC paid a foreign national to pay Russians to get that information against Trump. Wow. I mean, does this sound fair to you? Manafort also played a role in an effort to soften a plank in the Republican Party platform, calling for lethal aid to Ukrainians fighting the Russian invasion of their country. And what NBC News doesn't point out is that the plank not only wasn't softened, they actually strengthened it to support Ukraine, the Republican Party platform. But that wasn't even reported in this. Huh. Does that sound fair to you? I mean, you look at this, all the way through it, it's just not accurate. There are errors of omission. There are errors of commission. There is unbelievable political spin in it, and that's from NBC News. Wow. What do you think? 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. 844-DIG-CHAD. So the Manafort one had nothing to do with Trump at all. But what about the Michael Cohen pleading guilty? That did have something to do with Trump. We'll hit that one in just a second. Take your phone calls on what you think about all this. 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. 844-DIG-CHAD. My name's Greg Knapp, in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
A bird in the hand is worth 140 on Twitter, so tweet your beak off at Chad Benson Show Twitter. And if instant gratification is your thing, hit Chad up on Instagram at Chad Benson. Your bird will thank you.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Greg Knapp. I'm in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show. Would love to know what you think about the Paul Manafort guilty verdicts on 8 counts, mistrial on the other 10, and the Michael Cohen guilty plea. Do you think it's going to hurt Trump? Do you think it's going to hurt him politically? Do you think it could hurt him legally? Well, the first one with Paul Manafort, legally, no, not at all. Politically, there will be people who think that because Paul Manafort was found guilty on these 8 counts, that somehow that's tied to President Trump. If you actually look at the charges, you'll see that it's not, but a lot of people won't be bothered with that. But legally, absolutely not. But then we move into the Michael Cohen case, and that's a different situation. So it's Trump's former lawyer. He's pleading guilty. Here's what he pleaded guilty to. 5 counts of tax evasion, 1 count of making false statements to a financial institution, 1 count of willfully causing an unlawful corporate contribution, and 1 count of making an excessive campaign contribution. Now, those last 2 have to do with Trump. The other ones don't. The last 2 have to do with his plea deal, where he said he violated federal campaign finance laws by arranging hush money payments to women. Now, the way he specified this was that he made these payments to the women for an unnamed candidate. I participated in the conduct for the purposes of influencing the election, he said in court. And he said that Trump directed him to pay women to stay silent about damaging stories during the 2016 presidential election. Now, if you look at the dates and the amount of money, it looks like Michael Cohen was talking about violating federal campaign finance laws by arranging the money to be paid to Stormy Daniels, the porn star, and former Playboy model Karen McDougal. That ties directly to Trump. Now, that could get Trump in trouble because of campaign finance laws. Now, I got a question to ask you, though. What we're talking about here is that President Trump, if this is true, asked Michael Cohen to pay hush money to women that he had affairs with so that that information wouldn't come out and hurt him in the election. And then he paid him back that money. Does anybody believe that that means President Trump should be impeached for affairs that happened before he ran for office, for a federal election charge of too much money from one person? According to Jonathan Turley, he said the president, he's a lawyer from George Washington University. He's on Fox News all the time. He leans left, but he's very fair when he does this stuff. He says the president could be an unindicted co-conspirator in those crimes with Cohen. Now, the other side of this that I would ask you is, how much is this one going to hurt President Trump with his supporters? Here's how I think it goes down. Trump supporters are going to say, this has nothing to do with Russia. This has nothing to do with Russian meddling. This has nothing to do with the election. I don't care. I think that's what Trump supporters are going to say. Trump haters are going to say, aha, see, it shows you he's surrounded by criminals, and I guarantee you that there's more information coming out, and it's going to be all about this Russian collusion. He's into it up to his neck. And yes, it shows just how horrible Trump is that he was paying off these women. What about Bill Clinton? Doesn't matter. What about JFK? Doesn't matter. What about all these? But it doesn't matter. And the guy in the middle is going to say, I got my tax cut. I got the regulations cut. I've got a good job. The economy's doing pretty well. I thought this was about Russia. Oh, and one more thing I got to say about his moral character. I'll hit that in just a minute. My name is Greg Knapp. You can jump into 844-DIG-CHAD. I'm in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent in thoughts and punk rock in life. It's the Chad Benson Show.
And my name is Greg Knapp, in for Chad Benson Show. 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board, thechadshow.com. We're talking about Paul Manafort being found guilty on 8 counts, mistrial on the other 10 counts. He's got another trial to go, though. But that trial had absolutely nothing to do with President Trump. Nothing about Russian collusion, nothing about Russian meddling in the elections. It was all about Paul Manafort. Okay, so that has nothing to do with Trump, even though the media tried to make it sound like it did. Then you move on to the Michael Cohen one, though, and he's saying that President Trump, or he said a candidate, told him to pay the hush money to these women to help influence the election, is how he put it. Now, does that impact Trump? Well, it sure looks like it does. Jonathan Turley, lawyer with George Washington University, says it could lead him to be an unindicted co-conspirator in federal election law violations. Rich wanted to join in on that. Rich, you are on the Chad Benson Show. My name's Greg Knapp, filling in. Go right ahead.
Okay, Craig. I haven't read anything on the Cohen stuff, but I don't really understand, because if Cohen made an excessive contribution, okay, that's fine. That's a violation. But if then Trump reimbursed him, Trump can donate as much as he wants to his own charity, to his own campaign, so I don't see how that could be a violation. So are they saying Trump coerced him into making an excessive donation? I don't understand.
Yeah, it does get a little complicated, doesn't it, Rich? I think, and I'm not a lawyer, I think it's going to be at the moment that Michael Cohen made that donation, he's violating the law, and he did it at the direction, if what he's saying is true, because they'd still have to prove that. I'm sure Trump's going to say that's not true. But if it's true, they would say Trump and Michael Cohen were in a conspiracy to break federal election law by having Michael Cohen use those corporate funds to pay that hush money. Even though Trump then paid it back, the fact that even for 1 second that money was paid by the corporation that was now in violation of the law, and you can't undo that. Like I said, I'm not a lawyer. I'm guessing from what I've read that that's the kind of path they would be going down. And maybe there's a law about you can't refund somebody that money once they've done it. Like I said, that's out of my bailiwick. I'm not a lawyer, but I think that's the route they're going.
Yeah, it's kind of convoluted there, but because I'm sure Cohen would not say that he never intended to recover the money, so it's just a pass-through from Trump.
Right.
Trump might be at issue for if he took a deduction for it or something like that, tax stuff.
What it really looks like to me, Rich...
excessive campaign.
Yeah, when you really look at it, though, Rich, it looks like, how can we get this guy? is what it really looks like, right? And yeah, he very well could be in trouble for that. What normally happens for something like that, though, is you get fined, and then you pay the fine. You know what I mean? So is that supposedly what's going to pull down the president? Now, let me ask you one other question, Rich. I've been asking this question today. Let me ask you this. How about on the moral side of this, seeing that President Trump, if this is true, that he had these affairs with these women while he was married and is paying them hush money to be quiet so that it doesn't hurt his election chances, would that change your vote back in the last election, and would it change your vote in the next election?
No. I mean, it's not something I would ever do. I'm a devout Catholic, and not the type of thing you want to hear or see, but does it affect him as a executive of the country? I don't think so.
Especially when we know how many executives of this country have done very similar things. Right? I mean, you get to the point where you're like, sure. Yeah, I mean, I would love to have a president that I think is beyond reproach with his moral character. And we almost had one with Mitt Romney. I mean, if this story had come out about Mitt Romney, it would totally change the way I think about Mitt Romney. But I already knew this about President Trump going in. I just understood my choices were President Trump or Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is not clean. She has her hands dirty as they can be in supporting her husband and all of his, quote, bimbo eruptions that they called them. And he's been accused of rape and sexual harassment and everything else. And she was right there trying to ruin the lives of those women who accused him. The Me Too movement didn't carry and take care of those people. So we knew this about Trump. I don't know that it's going to hurt him politically that much. And people already have this baked into the cake.
Well, big surprise. A billionaire's sleeping around. Women are throwing themselves at him. I mean,
well, that's probably true, too.
You'd think something that if he didn't, they'd all call him gay.
I don't know about that. Thank you, Rich. I appreciate you getting in. I don't know about that, but yeah, I do understand your point. Rich, famous, powerful men and do have women willing to do this. And it takes the strong man to say no. But I don't know that that's going to have that much problem. I think he will have some issues with federal election law if they decide to come after this. I don't know enough about it to know how much it would hurt him. What do you think? Is it going to hurt in the upcoming midterm elections, and will it hurt him for re-election? Or will it be something that could lead to his impeachment? I don't think so. I think the press that really, really wants this is way overreacting to it. 844-DIG-CHAD gets you on board the program. 844-DIG-CHAD and you're in. I love this story because it just shows, I mean, a country that does this shows you we don't have that many problems, really. What is this? New York Times. Company is offering fraternity. Others have called it pawternity. It's when you take fraternity leave for your pet. Not maternity or paternity, but fraternity. And what I love about it is, thank God, it's a private company doing this. It's not a city. It's not a state. It's not the federal government. If that was happening, I'd be 100% against this. But this is a private company saying we're looking for benefits that we can give our employees that make them want to keep coming and working here. And you know what? Good for them. It's a Minneapolis marketing company. And new benefits that just came out. They gave workers a larger commuter stipend. And they gave them fraternity leave. You can work from home for a week to welcome new dogs or cats. A week? All you get is a week? Come on, the puppies need longer than that. I don't know about the kittens, but the puppies need a little bit longer. I love listening to some of these employees. Connor McCarthy, senior account manager at Nina Hale, was the latest employee there to seek permission to work from home with a new pet. In May, Mr. McCarthy was finalizing the adoption of a golden doodle. Okay, first of all, right there, the adoption. Well, Greg, these animals are like our family. I love dogs. I love my dog when I had a dog. But I own the dog. No, you don't own the dog. The dog is part of your family. You've adopted the dog. This is just... In May, Mr. McCarthy was finalizing the adoption of a golden doodle puppy named Bentley. And McCarthy had read a lot about the pitfalls of helping dogs adjust to a new environment. It can be stressful. It can be a stressful situation going from its original home to a new home. So, of course, I had to take fraternity. There are people starving to death in Venezuela right now. They're eating flamingos if they can find one. They're trying to get to Brazil, which isn't a huge step up depending on where you live in Brazil, especially if you're in one of the migrant camps that they set on fire in Brazil recently. And if they could read this story, that people in America are getting fraternity so they can stay home for a week with their pet, they'd be going bonkers, man. Talk about a first world problem. But I love it. No, I do. I really do. As long as it's done by the private company as a benefit for you and it's important to you, I want more people to work from home all the time. If I was in charge of a company that did projects, now service organizations are different, right? If you work at a restaurant or a coffee shop, you can't work from home. But, you can't deliver coffee from your house. But if it's a project-based enterprise, I need you to get this project done for me by Tuesday. I need you to work on whatever. I think working at home is great. You just tell them, look, I need this by Wednesday. And if it's done, then you've done your job. It doesn't have to be I'm paying you per hour. I'm paying you per project. And I need you to do this by Wednesday. And when you get that done, let me know. And then I need this by Friday. And if you can work from home, you save us money. And you save us on gasoline commuting, and you save us on pollution, and you save us on all kind of great things. I think we should do it more often. And it could even help us in how many roads we have to build. I mean, it's constant construction. And if you live in a big city, your city's traffic is getting outrageous. I would love, if I was the mayor or city council, I'd love to give incentives to companies that had more and more people telecommute. Because so many people don't have to go into work every day, but they do because the bosses and the mid-level managers are afraid that their employees won't really do the work if they let them work from home. And what it really is they're afraid their job won't be necessary if they let people work from home. But imagine if a third of the workforce could work from home at least a few days a week, and what that would do to the traffic congestion, to the gasoline consumption, and to the pollution. Oh, speaking of pollution, you got to hear this story. Oh, this is great. There's a story out from the Washington Times. It's a commentary from Stephen Moore, and it's about the Paris Accord. And he starts off with this. Hey, I want you to take a wild guess. What country is reducing its greenhouse gas emissions the most, according to the Paris Accord requirements? Right? Remember, we pulled out of the Paris Accord. So who's doing the best? Maybe Canada. I mean, they're green, right? Nope, not Canada. All right, France. I mean, France is always talking about being green. They got all the nuclear power plants, and I don't know if that's green. Well, no, it's not France. Great Britain? Nope. Germany. I bet it's Germany. No. Japan? No. The cleanest of them all, reducing its greenhouse gas emissions the most, according to the Paris Accord requirements. The United States of America. Bing, 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 bing. We have a winner. No, it can't be. We're not even in the Paris Accord. Doesn't matter. We are still reducing it more than the other countries who are in the Paris Accord. In fact, all but 5 countries in the Paris Accord aren't even at 50% of their current targets at reducing the CO2 emissions. But we're in the Accord, and that evil United States of America pulled out of the Accord. They're the bad guys. Trump is trying to destroy the world with global warming. We're doing better than you guys are. The latest World Climate Report from the BP Statistical Review of World Energy finds in 2017, America reduced its carbon emissions by 0.5%, the most of all major countries, while our economy grew by nearly 3%. So we had more growth than any of the countries in the Paris Accord, more economic growth, which uses more energy, and yet we had a bigger reduction in CO2 emissions than any other country. Wow. The main reason? Shale oil and gas revolution. The fracking that the environmentalists don't want you to do. That's what's reduced our CO2 emissions more than anybody else. Clean natural gas for electric power generation. And we're exporting it so that other countries can use natural gas for clean energy. It's not clean. It's still burning. There's still some CO2 emissions. It's a lot better than coal and oil. The world's largest emitter of carbon dioxide is still China. China produces 28% of the world's carbon dioxide emissions. India is in third place. Had the second largest increment of carbon dioxide emissions in 2017, more than twice as much an increase as the U.S. reduction. How about that? In fact, for every ton of reduced pollution from the United States, China and India produce almost 10 more tons. In other words, it really doesn't matter how much we reduce what we're putting out, because China and India are going to swamp it. Well, but, those awful people from America. That's what that is. What do you think? 844-DIG-CHAD gets you in. Would you, hey, it's a great question. Ask a liberal friend. Who do you think is reducing CO2 emissions the most out of all the countries in the Paris Accord and out of it? And the answer is the United States. They'll never guess it. 844-DIG-CHAD. Wait till you hear why another restaurant closed and who went and visited it. My name's Greg Knapp, in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
Subaru, a Subaru.
No fake outrage here, just the real thing. The Chad Benson Show.
And my name is Greg Knapp, in for Chad Benson. 844-DIG-CHAD gets you on. On Monday, the self-avowed socialist Ocasio-Cortez, one in New York, the future of the Democratic Party, according to the DNC chair, she visited a place called The Coffee Shop. Now, it's been a site in Union Square for years that people go to. Open for 30-odd years, okay? And she worked there. And she cited her experience at the restaurant as a case study in bettering oneself and the future. This is from the Washington Free Beacon. And she said this, quote, "The restaurant I used to work at is closing its doors. I swung by today to say hi one last time and kid around with friends like old times. I'm a normal working person who chose to run for office because I believe we can have a better future. You can do it too. We all can." What she left out was the reason the store closed, according to the store owners, the restaurant owners, quote, "The rents are very high, and now the minimum wage is going up, and we have a huge number of employees." Yes, the artificial increase in the minimum wage in New York that Ocasio-Cortez supported is why the restaurant that she worked at closed. Well, but, it's better for the people to get more money, except 150 workers are now out of work. Well, it's nice. Oh, and men, I have a question for you. I saw this today, and I just want to know if you felt the same way I did. Chanel has now announced a new men's makeup line. Now, it's not available yet, but it'll be available later this year. And they believe you are an untapped market. They're calling it Boy de Chanel. It's a makeup line for men. It's going to feature a tinted fluid in 4 colors, lip balm, and eyebrow pencils in 4 shades. I don't even understand what tinted fluid is. Chanel says the new line is all about reaffirming the ever-changing codes of an unchanging vision. Beauty is not a matter of gender. It is a matter of style. It's going to start in South Korea. It might work in South Korea. I don't know when it's coming to America. Just quick question for you. No judging here at all. If you're a man, are you remotely interested in this? I mean, I've got zero interest in this. And the main reason is I don't want to put in extra effort on how I look every day. Being a man is one of the great things about being a man is I don't have to put on makeup. I already have to shave. I don't need to put makeup on. Come on. I'm trying to get by with as little as possible in my personal appearance. Men's makeup. I don't know, man. I don't think it's going to do well. Only in certain areas. Oh, and before we leave, I got a question for you. I like to play this little game called Who's the Jerk? All right, so my daughter needs a used car. My daughter that's in college. So I'm looking for it on Craigslist, and too many dealers are in here. I want to buy it from an individual. I don't like buying it from a used car dealer. Okay, I just don't. So I text the guy, hey, is your Sonata still available? Are you a dealer? He replies, yes. Now, there were 2 questions there, so I go back to him. Yes to both questions? He goes, no, only to one. I go, which one? He says the first one. I go, oh, well, great. Can I come look at the car? He finally, a couple days later, goes, yeah, you can come look at the car. By the way, which car? Because I got a lot of them. I say, so you are a dealer? He goes, yeah. And then he's mad at me for being upset about it. Who's the jerk here, people? My name's Greg Knapp, in for Chad Benson. Thanks for listening. This is the Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.